welcome to Paul Britt's Coach's Corner. I'm Paul Britt, and this is my Coach's Corner. Before we go any further, we have to mention our sponsors. 8 is greater than 80. Those who know will know. Integrated Media, as you can see, the guys are doing their thing. Last but not least, It Ain't Easy Clothing. Because it ain't easy, baby. I just make it look easy. Now, we're going to get right into those projections this week. This week, we're going to talk about the Ravens Jets fiasco, the Intramural Football Club of Washington, D.C. against the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Great Saints. And before we go any further, Bruce Throne, you are a horrible person. That picture that you sent to me while I was at the wedding, it was improper, it was indignant, and it was disrespectful. A picture of the Great Saints. Saints moving on like the diesel engine, and you're going to send me a picture of a train derailed, laying on its side. That was extremely inappropriate. I'll be back at you, Bruce. City High School. Now, let's talk about the Ravens-Jets fiasco. As I stated, I didn't get a chance to watch the game live, but believe it or not, I was at Ravens Stadium at a wedding. My friend DeJuan Jones, he did his thing. He got married, and congratulations, DeJuan and Triana. But my phone was blowing up so much that the pastor had to stop the wedding. Like, brother, answer that phone. There's something important going on. I said, no, pastor. No. You go on with the ceremony. I'll get with that later. It's crazy. I figured the way my phone was blowing up at least 1,000 texts that I was either egregiously incorrect about my assessments of what was going to happen or insanely correct. We're going to go with the latter. I was insanely correct. Let's talk about some of the things that happened. Joe Flacco, Fraudway Joe threw the ball 44 times, 25 out of 44 for 248 yards. I wasn't able to find out how many interceptions he threw, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that he threw at least two. At least one, but possibly two. I'm certain that he had a chance to win the game at the end. And again, raise your hands if you thought that Joe Flacco would win the game for you. I mean, just bring it down the stretch during money time. Raise your hands. Put your damn hands down. Now, I saw that Terrence West ran the ball. He only had 8 carries for 10 yards. I believe I predicted that he wasn't going to do very well. That was a product of the offensive line, and it's impossible for him to get very many yards, only getting 8 carries, and Fraudway Joe laying it up 44 times. I'm certain that he may have hit a few good ones, but the problem with Joe is that he'll give you that fool's gold where he'll put one right in the pocket, look like a professional one time, and then he'll hiccup the next 10 times. As a good friend of mine, Wayne Barnes, has told me on many occasions, even a broke clock can get right twice a day. That's Joe Flacco. He's a broken clock. Mike Wallace had 10 receptions for 120 yards. So he must have laid up a few. Or maybe Mike Wallace had a lot of yards after catch. Brashard Perryman, 1 reception for 11 yards. I'm going to stop talking about the ineffectiveness of Brashard Perryman, the injuries, and this, that, and the other. I'm going to go into player development. The Ravens have done a horrible job with player development. They have received a lot of good draft picks, but what they're not doing is developing ball players. They'd rather go out and get someone established. That's not going to work all the time because once they're established and got a lot of money, everybody want to be your buddy and honey. That's the Vapors by Biz Markie. Do your history. But once you're established, you have a few years in the league, and you're susceptible to injury. When people are established, it's because they've already thrown themselves into it, and they sustain injuries, and they have wear and tear. And when you get they're only going to be good for a year or two. You have to develop your own guys, and the Ravens have done a poor job of that. I want to talk about that poor ratio of runs to passes. They continually leave the game in Fraudway Joe's hand. And this is a guy, Fraudway Joe, where no one wants to talk about it, but everyone talks about he was at the University of Delaware and he did well. But we never talk about that he was at the University of Pittsburgh before he got to the University of Delaware. And while he was at the University of Pittsburgh, he was able to beat out a guy named Tyler Palko. Who is Tyler Palko? Tyler Palco. That sounds like a toy. He was unable to beat this guy out for his position, so as opposed to fighting for it, he left and went to the University of Delaware, and it is my suspicion that the roster was probably inundated with poor quality players. And he was able to shine when being a smart kid on the dumb road. But when you're in the NFL, this is big time football. Everything has to be correct. Let's talk about hard-boiled. Hard-boiled, and all I'm talking about now is the state of the Ravens. Hard-boiled is nobody's victim. He's only a victim of his own ego. Harbaugh actually drank the Kool-Aid and was listening to what the press clips were saying. He actually thought that he was a good coach. The Ravens have been progressively spiraling downward since they've had hard-boiled. But the problem is winning cures all evils, winning will cover up all ailments. And that's what was going on. The Ravens were winning in spite of hard-boiled, but nobody saw that. They only saw the wins, but they didn't see how the team was progressively going down. See, this is not a one-year thing. This has been like a 6 or 7 year thing. Hard-boiled has difficulty with keeping a locker room together with alpha personalities. I've been saying this for a long time. He cannot handle alpha personalities, so he systematically gets rid of them. It all started with a guy named Bernard Pollard, who was coming off of probably his best season. He got rid of Bernard Pollard because Bernard Pollard quickly realized that this guy was a fraud, and he questioned him in that locker room. And as opposed to hard-boiled projected himself to be the man and the coach that he is, he got rid of Pollard. Say, man, I can't have this guy exposing me. The Ravens have been a victim of loaded rosters, which gives a false impression of the coaching. Billick was no good. Billick was inflated. If you give me Randy Moss, Chris Carter, Jake Reed, I believe his name was the tight end, and Randall Cunningham, and you had Culpepper coming off the bench. And all he did was throw the ball up. So that Billick was inflated. Now you have Hardboiled, who's inflated because they inherited these loaded rosters, and it makes something seem what it's actually not. The Ravens, they have parted ways with players like Vontae Leach, who was a dog. You had players like Elvis Dumerville's still here. Jacoby Jones, very underrated for what he did with the Ravens. Everyone talks about the drops that he had in Houston. When he got to Baltimore, he was money. Special teams, and he turned into a receiver. People underestimate the importance of Torrey Holt. Torrey Holt had concrete hands, but he had excellent speed. And what he didn't do with reception yards, the hidden stat is that he drew more pass interferences. So it was skewed. His importance was skewed. It seemed like he wasn't as important as what he was. But he stretched the field, and he was always getting interfered with, which flipped the field for the Ravens. Ray Rice, he was railroaded, but he made Fraudway Joe look better than what he was. He was his outlet. A little 5'5", 5'6", 5'7" guy who was doing it. It wasn't Fraudway Joe. It was Ray Rice who was making him look better. They were playing. I have a list. I'm not going to go into anymore. The bottom line is that the Ravens have had loaded rosters. They've had loaded coaching staffs. Let's go Kubiak, Jim Caldwell, Rex Ryan, Marvin Lewis, Jack Del Rio, who was good, but he's a little overrated. He shouldn't have got the job in Jacksonville. That should have been Marvin Lewis's job. Jack Del Rio didn't deserve that job. He went down there and made a mess of it. Marvin Lewis would have done a better job in Jacksonville than Jack Del Rio. But then Marvin Lewis was given the Cincinnati job, which was a crap job at the time. And Marvin Lewis has made that into his retirement program. He's done so well. They'll never get rid of him there. Chuck Pagano, Mike Singletary, Hugh Jackson. They've had lots of great alpha personality coaches, but they're no longer here. And because they're no longer here, Hardboiled has to now project himself as the alpha male, and he's not that guy. And because of that, it's been a downward spiral. That's what's going on. That's the state of the Ravens. The Ravens, they've just done a horrible job of player development, and that goes on hard-boiled because of the coaches that he has surrounded himself with. He has Jerry Roswell, Dean Peebrain, and Trespass, don't trust him, Trestman he had, and now he has Marty Mornway. As if Marty Mornway is going to do anything any differently than what Trestman was doing. It's impossible. You can't change your whole offensive scheme in the middle of the season. He's only going to do what Trestman was doing, and Trestman was only doing what Hardboiled wanted him to do. So, the only thing that Mornway can do is add a few wrinkles to what Hardboiled already wants him to do, and it's nothing but a smokescreen to make you forget the fact that Hardboiled is the mastermind behind this clusterfuck. That's enough of the state of the Ravens. We're going down. It's starting from the top. They need to get rid of Hardboiled and all of his disciples. Let's talk about the Intramural Football Club of Washington, D.C. against the Bengals. This is going to be short and sweet. The Bengals will win because the Bengals have Marvin Lewis, and the Intramural Football Club of Washington, D.C. has that fraud, Jay Gruden, who would only have a job. He only has a job because of his brother, the quote-unquote football guru. I'm not even going to mention, well, you know his name is Gruden. That's his brother. But anyway, the Bengals are going to win by 8. I don't know the over and under, but if I was a betting man, I would say the Bengals will win that game by 8. We're going to talk about the great Saints. The great Saints against the Seahawks. Again, this is going to be Drew Brees, Brandon Cooks, Mark Ingram against the Seattle Seahawks. Tough situation. They're playing in the Mercedes-Benz Dome in New Orleans, which Drew Brees and his guys do well. Drew Brees and the Miracles, they do well in the Dome. But they have no defense. Russell Wilson of the Seahawks, he's injured. He's going to be slowed down. Jimmy Graham may not play. But the bottom line is the Saints have no defense. So as opposed to the Seahawks flying up and down the field, they're just going to move the ball up and down the field. They may not score 40. They'll probably score about 32. Drew Brees is going to score at least 21. He's going to throw for at least 300 yards. The bottom line is that I believe that the Seahawks will win this one 34-24. The Seahawks, the Seahawks are going to fly up the field. The Saints will offer little resistance because they have no defense. They're in need of a total makeover. They need to keep a few players, get rid of a few players, get some value for those players, and they're in need of a total makeover. But the bottom line is they have Sean Payton, and Sean Payton is a coach, and he's a mastermind. He'll get it right. That's all for today's Coach's Corner. That's all we have for today. But again, don't forget to get out there and vote. Vote, vote, vote. Vote for your candidate. Vote for the candidate who supports your mission, who supports your vision, who's going to make this country a better place, who's going to do whatever it takes to get us on the right track. We have a lot of ailments. There are a lot of things being exposed. There are a lot of groups that in America we thought were extinct, no longer existed, but we're starting to find out that those groups are now rearing their ugly heads. So more than ever, your vote is important because remember, if you're not a registered voter, you're not eligible to be on any jury. If you're not on any jury, then we as people won't have an opportunity to be judged by a jury of people from our own community. Peace, rest in heaven. Jerry Gorham, my man, miss you. Talk to you guys soon. See you next week.
It ain't easy being me. I just make it look easy.